Hi friends, I'm trying this new webcam live stream thing, which is a lot easier to set up than the normal live streaming. And I don't know what the quality of this stream is. Am I not getting levels? A little bit, not really that hot. Let me see. Can you hear me, Justin Roven? This is the first time I've used this thing before. Anyhow, if anybody has any questions about cognitive functions, I would be happy to answer them here in this live stream. Which is the purpose of this live stream is twofold: to answer your questions and to see what this live stream is like. Because I've done the other live stream before, but I've always had technical difficulties with it. I changed the settings on my OBS. Oh, I'm not using that. Oh yeah, that's why I'm bypassing OBS. I'm just using this webcam live stream. That's a lot more convenient. Hopefully it looks spicy is fine. Anyhow, I'll just sort of continue yammering on until somebody asks a cognitive function question in the chat here. And at that point, I will answer said question using my brain, my mouth, and my lungs, my tongue, to enunciate things. Can you clarify how you recognize an SE-style memory and SI-style memory? Okay, well, I don't think SE has to do with memory at all. I think most of memory is SI. The thing is, we should classify memory as one kind of knowing. The other kind of knowing being pattern recognition, basically. So you're either an SI knower from experience, and if you're an SI person in the first slot, you come to any experience by knowing what it's going to be like ahead of time, like Kimberly. But if you're an NI user, then you sort of recognize how a given instance reflects a universal symbolic representation of it, and then you know like that more. INFJs and ISFJs, in theory, and ISTJs and INTJs are the four kinds that can, in my new hypothesis, multitask. In other words, use both knowing functions concurrently, because it's 1-8. Yeah. So it's like the first and eighth slot functions are, for me, I can do stuff with SE. I can follow through on like moving shit, like I'm moving furniture or whatever, while I'm thinking about some ideas in my head that are interesting to me. But I can only do it to a point. When I get really deeply into thinking, I'll actually physically come to a stop. I'll stop moving. Like sometimes in the middle of a room, because I'm trying to figure something out in my head, and it's requiring all of my attention. But by and large, I can usually SE and NE at the same time. And I think it's quite plausible that each of the types can do both of their dominant functions kind of type. So action types, SE, NE DOMs, can do both action types concurrently. Knowing types, NI, SI DOMs, can do both knowing concurrently. Interface types, FE and TE DOMs, can do both interface concurrently. And judging types, TI and FI DOMs, can do both concurrently. Let's see. Any other questions? What do you think about comparing relationships between the two sets of functions where the functions text have some symmetry between the two? like two supervisor relationships? Well, I think it's an interesting question because I think mostly it applies to duality is where I find it interesting. It's like, does duality work for all quadras or does it just work for alpha quadra? I'm pretty convinced it works for alpha quadra. Now, being dual with somebody in and of itself is not sufficient to guarantee you a happy, good relationship. But I'm quite convinced that for duals, if they want to have ultimately their ideal have a good relationship is going to be with one of their duals, with an instance of their dual. I'm not sure that's true for other quadras. So as a consequence, I'm a little hesitant about those comparisons. For example, let's look at the supervisor relationship. My supervisee is ISTP. And my supervisor is ESTJ. Now, in the supervisor instance, his dominant is my sixth slot, and his tool. He can't be. No, that's my benefactor. Sorry, my supervisor is INFP. So their dominant is my polar, and their tool is my dominant. Okay, but then, and it's the same way with ISTP with me. Let's see. Yeah, their tool, their dominant is my tool. Right. Okay, is it the same for that for all types? I'm not really sure. It's like sometimes you get the introverts and the extroverts, and they have different kinds of relationships. Like look at the way that, for example, well, I don't know. It's a complicated question. I'm going to just sort of not, rather than get off the rails here on that for too much musing about possibilities, I'm just going to say, I think intertype relationships are an important application of cognitive functions, but I'm not sure that the socioanalytic intertype relationships have it exactly right. Nor am I convinced that it may be the case that there are, unfortunately, more intertype relationships than the ones they have established. So it may be the case that what functions as a supervisor-supervisee relationship between these two has a different tenor between these other two or something. But I don't really know. That's sort of a question requires you to like do a lot of taxonomy on a lot of specific, get bogged down in it. I like a cognitive function model and thinking analysis to not get bogged down into the nodes, to stay about the relationship between the nodes. Do INTPs have good FI? Yes. I would say yes, they do. And it depends what you mean by good FI, of course. But if you think about FI as serving the self, then yes, they do. I think it's the case that INTPs are very unlikely to get into the wrong relationship compared to other types. And I think they're likely to get into the right relationship compared to other types at a certain point anyway. I mean, obviously everybody's going to get in the wrong relationship when they're 20 years old. It's almost unavoidable. Because most people aren't, most people who are getting in relationships, they're getting in relationships from a position of either insecurity or ego that alters their natural, they don't have the right relationship of balance between their various judging functions, it's just because we're immature. So I would say INTPs do have good FI. They have effective FI. In other words, they use it effectively in the 8th slot. Our 8th slot is probably our most effective function. So does that mean they have as conscious and aware and willful FI is like an INFP or something? No, but they have very effective FI. So what do you think? What do you personally think the identifying difference between FI and TI, since functions are similar, judgment does, they're more balanced? Well, I mean, the difference is very straightforward. FI is a interested calculus. It's a wordless calculus, and TI is an interested calculus. I mean, a disinterested calculus, and it's a word-based calculus. You can think of all the four quote-unquote metaphysical functions or universalist functions as being how we be in the land of words and or other symbols. That's TI, FE, NE, and NI. Those four are the land of words. And then SI, SE, FI, and TE are the land of no words. So the thing about it is, to make an interested calculus requires no words. To know that I love that little thing and I don't want it to go away. When, you know, like when mom says, sorry, we can't keep this stray cat, I got to send it off to the pound. You know, you want to keep that cat. You don't need words. You're just attached to it, right? So the wordless judgment that informs you, you don't like this decision mom is making. You want this cat. That is one that is expressed in words, like I like the cat and I want it, but it's experiential instance is one that is not experienced via words at all. On the other hand, words are other symbols, and it can't express in any other way. Is it possible to develop functions lower in cognitive stack by conscious choice, as in doing some kind of special exercise and meditation? Your thoughts? Well, it is possible to learn to activate the other functions that are lower in the stack. For example, it's pretty straightforward for me to get into SE real time. Remember the aspects of things. So when you're talking about using a function right now, you're talking about activating it in a moment of being that is the present in a way that allows you to understand something. So if you want to be SE all of a sudden, you go, all right, I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to listen to all the different sounds I can hear. And I'm going to I could also look around the room, right? And I could, all the sensory data I could possibly make note of. So I'm going to do it for like 10 seconds. So I was in SE mode there. I was actually attending externally to the environment using my senses and not thinking thoughts in my head really, but paying attention to, well, the thoughts in my head were like dog, like when the dog barked. Oh, there's a dog barking. There's a man, right? Like noting the sounds maybe. Yeah, so that's extrovert sensing. You can put yourself in that space for a time period if you want to, but the point of it is I'm not naturally doing that kind of action, the kind of action that requires me to attend via extroverted sensing. So attending via extroverted sensing means paying attention to the external sensory data such that presumably you can take advantage of opportunities that arise in the sensory field, data field environment. So if you're out in the forest and you hear a deer rustling in the leaves over there, you're listening to hear it continue to move and waiting for it to come into view. And as soon as it steps out from behind that tree, you shoot it with your bow and arrow. Well, the NI is the part that tells you when to shoot it with a bow and arrow in the real time. So it's like, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. And then you see it coming, and then, you know, you can see it's going to be right here when the arrow gets there if you shoot right now. And it's something you know, not something you calculate. And so that's a good understanding of SENI, or good explanation of SENI. And how to put yourself in NI in the moment is another question. For me, it's most simply done by, if I have a complicated question, and I remember one time I was asking Taylor, I said, I got this complicated question about this chick and whether I should get on her or not, or stuff like that, you know? And he said, what does your NI tell you? And I immediately had an answer rush to the surface. Now, I didn't end up going with that answer because I didn't like it, which was, don't get on this chick, you know? But anyway, that was one way to prompt my NI, simply to ask the question, what does your NI tell you? What does that mean? It says to yourself, what's the obvious, straightforward answer to this? What's the answer that jumps to mind is, there you go, Eric, there's the answer, like it or not. What jumps to mind? Not always does something jump to mind. Not everything is conducive to using NI. But that's an example. I could get into my FI, no problem. I could start sitting here imagining like my daughter dying or something, and I'd get very cryy. I'd activate my FI. TE is one of the harder things, I think, for me to understand how to activate, because I go into every TE moment making the same mistake over and over again and never seem to learn from it, which is applying some learned heuristic about the extroverted logic of the world, rather than actually looking at the situation in front of me and gauging, what can I do here? Let's look at all the stuff. Look at the problem all the way around it, and don't go in with preconceptions. Universalist approach, which I'm universalist, particularist in my stack. Everybody got 3 of one and 1 of the other. And INFJ and ENTP have 3 universals and then a particular. And so that just makes us the most metaphysical types. Anyway, so yeah, you can go into those modes. I don't understand what the purpose of it would be, though. It's like, if I'm activating my FI, then presumably I want to do so for some reason. Now, I could make myself cry by thinking about my daughter dying, but what am I learning from that? That I value her? I already know that. And, you know, if I try to activate it regarding a decision I'm making, that will lead me astray consistently. I'm not good at incorporating my feelings into decision making. So in that instance, I wouldn't want to be in a feelings place. TE would be useful to be able to switch over to it more, you know, but when it comes to actual problem solving, like I said, it's a weird kind of ritual failure to remember or failure to apply what I think I know. Every time. I mean, I do get better because of the heuristics. I learn little tricks and stuff that I have to apply generally. Nowadays, when I move something, I usually look across where I'm going to be walking to move something that might be in the way first. That's a big TE growth moment for me, you know. All right, so let's see. Do SE Doms daydream? I don't know. Hey, I'm an INFP and I have a desire to do creative things, but I'm not sure if it's better for me to go 100% into something creative for a living or just do creative things on the side. Thanks. Well, you can't really go do creative things for a living. You can either more or less successfully avoid jobs, but probably aren't going to get much money in endeavors for quite some time. I mean, you could be somebody who either gets lucky or is a genius or something, but oh yeah, it is down. I don't really know exactly. I could put that stuff up on my blog. I have a blog called Rice Ass Rust. No, yeah, it's called Rice Ass Rust, but I think the URL is, I don't know what the URL is anymore. TE gods will grant me a wish. Okay, well, if that's true, then geez, I mean, I'm gonna have to go for that. I'll try to upload it to my blog over the next couple of days. Let's try to upload these things. I think my blog lets me upload shit. If not, I can just put links to Google Drive maybe. Let's see what's a ass rest. There it is. .blogspot.com. riceassrest.blogspot.com. Yeah, that's my, I'll put the URL here in the chat. This is my blog from long time ago. And it's, I'll put those documents up there in the next couple of days, over a few at a time. Let's see here. How do INFPs use TI compared to how INTPs use it? Well, the thing about 8-slot functions is I would say they get used appropriately. So INFPs are going to use TI when it's appropriate to use TI. And they're going to get out of TI probably most of the efficacy in their lives. So a successful INFP is going to be successful in a field probably that requires some TI. This fucking dog. God damn it. Shush. Hey, shut your mouth. In that sense, INFPs are kind of more fortunate than INTPs. There's a lot more jobs that require TI than there are that require FI. I don't know what an FI job would be. How the ego plays a role in relation to cognitive functions. Well, that's, I think, a stage of development thing. I think that people over time either evolve or develop into someone who has a clear vision. This is from an ENTP's perspective. I don't know if this is going to be true for everybody or not, but I think that people who grow into a clear vision of who they are and find themselves enabled to live consistently with that vision and have had the time to face some of their fears and get past them. Have had the time to accept some of the realities that they don't like about themselves and process that such that it's no longer a drag. Like all of these sort of what people call ego shit, it's just it's friction that slows down the ontological process, or I guess prevents you from functioning more optimally. Like, and a lot of it has to do with damage. It's my working hypothesis on this is it starts with some kind of damage. Everybody sustains some kind of damage, and then it's internalized. And the thing is, if you don't sustain any kind of damage and don't internalize it, then you just turn into an absolute douche until you do sustain some kind of damage and are humbled adequately. You know, everybody's got to be humbled sometimes, because otherwise you just, you turn into fucking Justin Bieber. And it's like everybody should feel very fortunate that they weren't made famous at age 14 or whatever. It's an ontology destroying phenomenon. Anyhow, so for like 90% of people, their issues relate back to damage of some sort. And then as they go forward through life and they start to address that, it manifests in one of two ways. Either it manifests in ways that cause a reinforcement of the damage, additional damage, or problems, or it manifests as something that one gets past and deals with. If one goes the first path, then one doesn't really grow much, and you're kind of not interesting at a certain point, and like middle age, and then your life's over and you're done because you haven't grown at all, and you're bitter and you're fed up, and I don't know, whatever. But if you deal with these things and start to just generally like embrace the similarity between your vision for who you are and your actual who you are, and have faith in that sort of thing, then you're freed up to do what you want to do, be who you want to be, without a lot of extra shit. Like Kimberly deals with her SI in a way that reflects a lot of damage. She is pretty pessimistic, and I think it's fair to say that a healthy person is optimistic. That pessimism is not a healthy alternative to optimism. It is a failure to be adequately positive in your narrative making. As an ENTP, I tend to think that I can create the reality I want to create if I can just be allowed to talk at people enough. You know, that eventually they're going to come around. Kimberly doesn't. Kimberly doesn't come around at all. She's a powerful anti-wizard. She prevents me from changing reality with words. I personally target my growth in terms of my relationship management, basically. Like, I've got a problem, which is this. I tend to evaluate everything via words because I'm such a metaphysical type. Kimberly tends to do much of her meaningful communication non-verbally. If she's sorry, she'll show me she's sorry by doing nice things for me. More than she will say she's sorry. And she tends to fail to understand the way that words have implications beyond their immediate meaning. I don't know. I think she's particularly distrusting because she had a rough childhood, and as a consequence, like there's probably never been anybody who's less susceptible to hypnosis than Kimberly. She will not tolerate giving you enough of the benefit of the doubt to make the leap in things. You know, she's always on the lookout for a trick or something. So it's not so much just ego as it is the habits of the self related to negative emotions. If your habits of the self are fearful, if your habits of the self are self-doubting, if your habits of the self are fixated on things that cause pain, if the habits of the self are fixated on the preservation of potentiality to the extent that it prevents the self from realizing potentialities, then at that point you're just boxing yourself in. You're just narrowing your capacity to be. Do you think understanding a person's cognitive function can play a part in designing an effective education system? Education system, for sure. I mean, there are certain types who need to be doing certain things and certain types who need to be doing other things. Put the NTPs in debate. You let the NTJs go to debate too. But that's a complicated question. The education system's all screwed up, and it's hard for me to explain what I think we should do with education without saying, first, make it non-compulsory, and then make it non-standardized. So now we're not doing anything about it, right? Individual parents, kids, and teachers are working together for actual specific purposes that can be articulated and either attained or not attained, and the attainment of which can be measured or not, and as yes or no in a meaningful way. Do you think there's any value in getting MBTI certified? It costs $2,000. No, I don't. Well, Shannon Loeb says, would you say that negativity is a sign of unhealthy applies to NFs who can be naively idealistic when undeveloped? I mean, I think that NTPs or ENTPs anyway, can be, I've been accused of being naive or, vulnerable to to anyone with a sneakiness about them if they come to me, but it's not really true. It just appears that way. Do you believe in mastering all the functions to achieve some pseudo-alignment? No, I absolutely not. I don't think that you can or would want to master functions that are not those in your habituated stack on the front, because first of all, each is an alternative way of accomplishing things. So you'd rather be excellent at accomplishing things one way than mediocre at accomplishing things two ways. And that's really, it's like, I could learn to type with my feet, with my toes, right? I could learn to type with my toes. I could type something in the chat right now with my toes, and it would take a long time, take a lot of effort. And if I practice and practice and practice, I could get those things, I could get something typed. But it's stupid. Why would I want to? So I can say, aha, look, now I can use my fingers and my toes. I'm a master. I'm a master toe and finger user. Well, I'd rather just type some shit into the chat without worrying about my toes. And the same thing is true with cognitive functions. I could spend time and energy trying to be more NE, for example, if I were an ESFP. And I would produce some blob of text that's mostly NI and sometimes attains a little bit of NE, kind of, yeah, I guess that's your NE. And okay, but why? To prove you're an ENTP or something? And it's not going to be good example of that as per compared against other people. Yeah, so Chad Crandall comments on the MBTI gifts question. He says he made a good amount of money doing it. I taught others, but I don't agree with the theory behind it anymore, so I stopped. It's too commercial. So, in other words, if you want to work it into a business, then it probably gives you more legitimacy to be MBTI certified. I mean, it certainly does. I've been able to make money typing people without MBTI certification, but I bet you Chad Crandall made a lot more money at it than I did. So, there you go. What are things you disagree with Dave Superpower system? I don't really know his system, to be honest. I just know a few things about it. I'm disagreeing with his division. One of the main things I'm disagreeing with. So Robert Pirsig, in his book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, made a division between what he called romantic and classical thinking, which is basically a division between FE and TE. FE says, I care a lot about how this looks. TE says, I don't care about how it looks. I care about how it works. And so Dave Superpower is making a similar distinction between his understandings of TE and I guess TI. He's saying that TE is that which is universally useful or effective. Namely, you might say that that the Apple iPhone shows good FE but less good TE, because the engineers would say it has less functionality than certain other ways of doing it or certain other things, but it looks nice and sells people with its shiny glimmer. It's form and function, okay? But the problem is this: TE is not something that is outside of us. It is a manner of attention. And so making the division, even though the division exists in the world between things that are understood through their form or understood through their function, valued through their form, valued through their function, that doesn't mean that we can meaningfully understand what TE is through that reality. It is true that TE is a tension, but it's a mistake to think then therefore that it's universalist, because we can calculate that certain things work better universally than other things work better universally. Doesn't mean that TE is universal. It just means that some solutions to some problems generalize better than others because of standardization. So if something's more standardized, the solution is going to generalize better. If we have something like, your question is, why does my freezer keep icing over? And the answer is, you've got a problem with your thing that tells it when the temperature is to cycle on the warming thing that prevents the icing of the freezer from happening. The reason I can look up the answer to why is my freezer freezing over all the time is because all freezers use the same basic technology to keep their freezer de-iced. So it's a universal, there's a norm or a standard that's used in these particular objects that allows the solution to it to be universalizable. But if your freezer is different, the solution won't work. And if you have, if you've got some other problem that's causing it, then you might be the solution too on the internet. The thing is, that's not the TE part of it. Is me trying to solve my problem by attending to what I'm seeing in the freezer, what's the problem is, and what I'm noting in the object, how it works, and stuff like that, and utilizing resources to gain information such as the internet. That's also TE. But I mean, the thing is, FE users will also attempt to do that. The question is, will they be able to accurately find the piece of information they need to find and stuff? TE polar people are bad at searching for things on the internet. Let's see. Where am I? Hey, there's Power Red Bull. Do you think extroverted intuitives might be considered naive because they consider alternative ideas? Well, I think I'm considered particularly naive. I don't know if that's true of all extroverted intuitives. I think I'm both extra open-minded and also extra undamaged. I've had a kind of a charmed life. I did get a certain amount of, I just saying a certain amount of bullying in school, but it wasn't as bad as it was for some others. And overall, like I said, I had a pretty charmed life. Things have been pretty good. Really, my biggest tragedy has been the death of my little dog, Lacey. I've had a couple divorces, but whatever. Shakes come and go, I guess. So I don't know. I just think that I'm naive because I've always approached, I have a strategy that I use that's sort of habitual, but I'm aware of what it is. Namely that I approach situations and people and everything with the presumption of that they are good and noble people who have something to offer. They can understand what I'm saying, and they are capable of being interestingly engaging with me, and I can trust them. Most people, I discovered, when you make it clear that you are affording them that benefit of the doubt, they live up to it, even if they didn't walk up to you with that intention. So anyway, thank you, Mega Bro, for validating my thoughts on Apple. How do you think cognitive function is developed throughout evolution? What was its purpose? What is purpose for the individual or species? Well, I don't buy evolution because there's no mechanism explaining how it is that the species evolves in complexity. And it's contraindicated by the fact that we know that the defining quality of a species is that two members of it always give birth to another one of the same thing. We've never seen anything to the contrary, and we've not ever seen any of this purported change of the species over time. It doesn't make any sense according to population math, if you think about it. No matter how advantageous a given adaptation or a given mutation might be, there's no way for it to dominate the genome of the species because there's 10,000 other ones. The only way to explain evolution through any kind of mechanism that includes mutation requires that you have a series of bottlenecks of genetic diversity down to repeat the founder's effect over and over and over again, such that you have Um, you have like this big population of birds called the squaller bird, let's call them. And then all of them die except for two mutants who are different than the genome. They have a kid that's mutated now with a slightly different genome. Then that population of that species grows up again, then bottlenecks down to two again. And they happen to be the mutated ones. It doesn't make any goddamn sense if you think about it. And additionally, we know that the genome of the human population or of Homo sapiens and almost every other species on the planet bottlenecked about 100,000 years ago, which means almost every single species on the planet got down to just a few individuals 100,000 years ago. Why is that? Is that true even? Well, it is, according to the evolutionary scientists who just came out with this paper about it. Additionally, we've had myriad extinction events. So if you think we've evolved over 4 billion years, that's insane. The last extinction event was only 66 billion years ago, or 66 million years ago. And there was many extinction events 40 million years ago as well. And purportedly, that's when approximately there was a sudden moment when all of this diversity of life all of a sudden came into being. And they call it punctuated equilibrium. Well, there was a few million years there where evolution went super fast for no reason that we can explain, and then it stopped again, and now we're in a period of stasis. Why? Well, because evolution, and that's obviously what we must conclude then. No, it makes no sense. It's bullshit. So I don't have any evolutionary explanation for cognitive functions. I believe the game developers of this sim modeled cognition after their own, and that either that or maybe it's this attentional configuration thing with contraindicative and let's say mutually inflationary elements and proportional and inversely proportional elements and stuff, that this is some sort of AI model that somebody's tried. I don't know. Let's see here. Okay. Well, yeah. Do you feel the polar perspective is the one that caused you the most challenge, or you just yeah, I do not feel the polar perspective is the one that causes me the most challenge. I feel like it's 8 or 6. I mean, 8 is very positive impact in my life, but it's also an area where I feel insecure in general. So I'm pretty good at it, but I'm also pretty bad at it, and I can be accused of poor follow through. I can be accused of just not prioritizing the physical aspects of things in general, and not noticing shit in the environment. I can be very clumsy. I mean, I don't exactly feel insecure about those things anymore, but they certainly were a source of some insecurity when you come into conflict with people who are like SE DOMs or something. And 6-slot TE is where I end up having the most sort of conflicts, because I don't think, well, I mean, you can see it all the time in my videos conflicting with TE DOMs or TE users on YouTube and their approach towards things. Because as a TE 6-slot countervaluing TE person, what that means is I don't like things to be purposeful. I don't like it when things need to be empirically established in order to be legitimized. I think that things can be entirely legitimized with words, and I don't need to have evidence or data or anything like that, you know? So let's see here. Yeah, squaller birds. Why do you think an INFP would be interested in physics or natural science? Well, I mean, you got your, I don't know. the thing about INFPs is, why are they interested in something? That's not a question you can really answer in the specific. If you say this INFP is interested in apple pie, why? Well, it's not universalizable. Why? It's because of their moisture. It's because of the dampness of their tenders. They have a damp tender that's specifically devoted towards apple pie. That's why they like it. I don't know why else. They just find it their precious little something. Can you explain why people balance the two judging and two perceiving functions consciously in terms of external versus internal? Like if you have FI and you also have TE. Oh, well, it's because the reason FI and TE go in a pair and TI and FE go in a pair is because, as I said earlier, FI and TE, along with NE and NI, are the word-based or symbol-based functions. Now, not all words. For NITE, for NETI, FE like me, I'm all words. If you got NI in the mix instead of NE, then you're much more likely to have symbols like images and stuff like that. But regardless, it's all representational. So the thing is, TI needs to be paired with FE because we're dealing with representational shit in both occasions. If I'm going to be telling you directly why I think you're wrong because here's a contradiction, I'm going to be impacting statuses on a social level as well. In other words, if you get schooled in front of everybody, your social status is going to go down. And if you school me in front of everybody, my social status is going to go down. So we have to factor in as users, not just what's the most logical argument, but also the respective positions in a hierarchy of people, and how we have to factor in, like, you need not just to be right, you need to attain agreement. TI hopes to attain agreement by being right, but it recognizes that agreement is sometimes you need to attain agreement by being nice as well. Regardless, TI and FE are about agreement. TE and TE and FI, as opposed to TI and FE, TE and FI are about attainment. So FI tells you what you want, TE tells you how to get it. And they're both about attainment. So that's the difference. TI, FE, agreement, TE, FI, attainment. TI is great at building precise theories, but TE is able to turn practical. It's the same with FI that builds certain more. No, I don't think so. I think FI is about what you are attached to and what's important to you, both sort of existentially and on a genetic level, which is if you see somebody suffering and you feel moved to take action, that is not FE. People mistake that as FE. Well, that's other people's feelings. You're seeing somebody else suffering. No, that's FI. Your resonance with suffering and making you feel bad, that's FI. You have a universal attachment, an inherent existential attachment, I should say, so we don't mix up terms here. An existential attachment to or against suffering. And that's FI. So when you hear INFJ say, but I do care about people a lot, Eric, FE is not just what you say it is. They're right. They do care about people. That's their FI. That's not their FE. The FE is about specifically how words impact other people's behavior. In other words, if I say please, I'm more likely to get this kind of thing. And so it's about perceptions, and it's about social dynamics and stuff like that. FE is. It's not about, and it's about making the effort too. It's like, for example, I'll be satisfied if I see that somebody's making the FE effort to say something like, "Hey, I'm sorry I didn't meow, but it was my bad, and next time I'll try to do so better." Right? Now, somebody could just play this game with me indefinitely and successfully get me to do all the shit for a certain number of times before I realize they're just playing this game, because I'm very satisfied by just the symbolic representation of accountability. Like, well, as long as you say the right words, then you can get away with murder. Do I care about the suffering of other people? Yeah, in the moment, in a real-time sense, I do. Like, I can't stand to witness it. It causes me great discomfort, and I have to do something. So it's like, depending on the circumstance, I may have to go up and take some sort of action if I see suffering that's being implemented in front of me in some capacity. Or if it's suffering that I don't want to do anything about, or wish I didn't have to do anything about or something, then I'll just look away from it and try not to look at it and go, yeah, you know, type 7 style. Yeah, so I'm very empathic in that sense. And when I see or hear something sad that of a certain kind, I might just burst into tears. I have very poor. No, ENTPs don't lack FI. ENTPs are FI polar, which means that we have poor FI regulation. It's not effective for me to use my FI to make decisions, and it surprises me a lot. So I'll be of a sudden overcome by emotion. Now, I'm very comfortable crying and being emotional because I have a very secure attachment style. I was raised by loving parents, and I don't have any kind of like, I have a secure attachment style. How do you deal with your functions that loop? Because sometimes I can't stand FI and SI looping all the time, and I feel regret. Well, this looping thing. I don't know how much I really experienced that. I would say that I can think of moments where I am looped into FI NETI things, where in other words, I'm feeling hurt by something Kimberly said, and I keep going over all the possible arguments I could be making about that, and yada, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, that runs out of gas pretty quick, because even though I'm in an environment, in a relationship where my FI is going to be activated a lot more than if I were single, for example, it still doesn't have a lot of staying power. It fades away pretty quick, and it doesn't sustain my interest that long. So, I can only obsess about how Kimberly hurt my feelings, and I want to go tell her this, and the other thing for so long before I just start thinking about other things. As far as other kind of loops, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what that term means. I get the concept of it, that you just keep doing FISI, meaning you keep remembering sad things and feeling the feelings, and remembering and feeling, and remembering and feeling, and remembering and feeling. But that would seem to me to be grief, probably, and that passes as the intensity of the feeling passes. I grieved my dog's death for about a week, and then I stopped thinking about it all the time and feeling all sad and stuff. How can you tell the difference between an INFP type 5 and an INTP? Well, look, for an IN, I guess you look to see what the seeking is. The thing is, INTPs are more socially careful than INFPs, regardless of anything else. And it's additionally the case that INTPs are more responsive in a positive way to positive FE gestures. If you praise an INTP for their intelligence, they will be beaming, even if at the same time they're like, you're just buttering me up or something, but they can't help it. They like it a lot, and they're pretty childlike in their FE. So I would say that you tell them apart by looking to see what their relationship with FE is. INFPs being FE ignoring seem much more either confusing about their FE or adult-like about their FE, because ignoring is pretty strong. You have any new working theories, or what's the latest? We spoke once, you described an ontological scorecard. Yeah, I do still have that value matrix, and I still use it, and it fits in with everything. It just says that you've got your base function or your program function, which is a term in socionics that I like, because it basically is saying, you know, it's the nuts and bolts of who you are. Your program function is an implicit value that says you won't be interested in anything. You won't sit around and do anything at all unless it validates against that implicit value. So if a situation doesn't allow me to use extroverted intuition at all, I will be avoidant of that situation and try to get out of there. The second function is instrumental in its value. TI is an instrumental value, and I expect to be allowed to use TI as a tool function. So when people try to prevent me from using TI as a tool function by not answering my questions or not wanting to be pinned down on anything, then I get furious. However, it's only an instrumental value. At the end of the day, things can be totally inconsistent. If you agree they're inconsistent, then I don't really care. You know, I don't really care about the inconsistency, as long as what I care about is my ability to communicate with you. Namely, I validate as an absolute value on the third slot, which is FE. I want you to like me and to respect me and to be able to communicate with me. No, I don't usually type police non-YouTubers. I type police YouTubers who state what type they are and who are making videos about, like, I'm an ENFP and I'm talking about ENFP. I don't remember what I was saying before I got distracted by that. Oh yeah, the value slots. Fourth slot is just you seem to delegate it. Fifth slot is how you validate other people in the world. So for me, you're a scumbag if you don't pass a minimum threshold of respect for truth, because I have NI fifth. But it's a pretty easy test to pass, and it's binary. So you don't get extra credit for being way up here. You're legitimate if you pass this test of values truth adequately. So Trump doesn't pass the test, and I think he's a scumbag. Not because I think his politics are so terrible, although I don't love them, but because he doesn't respect the truth. And then sixth slot function is countervalued for most people. But the thing is, that's going to vary a little bit depending on your aspects and your type. So as I mentioned in the INTP video, they have a much less countervalued NI than does the INFP, who has a much more countervalued NI because of the way that their stacks conflict on an aspect level. Because INFPs are physical first and particularist first with FI. They prefer the physical particularist usages of each of the functions. And that since that physical particularist use of NI links to SE, which is their polar in the real-time moment, then they don't like the metaphysical aspect of NI because it invalid their particular feelings experience of something, and or their ability to potentiate endless other possibilities of the thing. It runs afoul of both those, and so they're particularly countervaluing of NI. So you can see that the value matrix is impacted somewhat by aspects. Seventh slot is, I just call it confused value. It's like, it just confuses you. You get it anytime you think you're talking about something else and you're wrong about it and whatever. And then the eighth slot function is balanced. It's undervalued and or insecurely valued. You get a lot out of it in terms of utility. You don't think a lot about it, though, or think of it as being a particular strength. And you're unlikely to use it for evil. So you're unlikely to use your eighth slot function. You're unlikely to misuse it. Your dominant function is your power, is part of your power pair, right? Your NETI or your whatever your first two functions is. It's very abusable. Anybody anytime you have power, you can abuse it. You don't really abuse your 8 slot function. So that's the thing about that. The value matrices, they're not precisely values on the backside. They're just kind of values on the front side. So yeah, no, I'm not going to type police you because you're not a YouTuber. You don't meet the criteria of type policing. If you'd like to hire you, email me. My email is ericstrauss_backwards@gmail.com. So Suarts Sire. Let's see here. Oh, I do want to be a press secretary. I mean, because again, this has everything to do with my faith and my ability to dictate reality as I want it to be. If I were in that position, I would make him a better person, and I would. Well, I mean, I'd have the floor. I'd figure something out. Days of Noah reader discretion advised. Extreme example: Peggy 20. Maybe an INFP dare would dare to study Joseph Mengel's work, whereas an INFP would not bother at all. Why do I feel like I am various types at different periods of my life? Because you think types are something that's described by describing a character, and that you match those characters differently in different times of your life. But that's why you should see what psychological feedback loops, not types, has his name that way for. Because while I don't necessarily share his feedback loops model, he and I are in full agreement that the idea of coming at it from a types first attitude is completely ass backwards. When does your ignoring function come on? Well, for me, it's something that's very active when I'm making music. It's active when I'm doing this. In fact, I've been attentive to the pace of my responses and the amount of time I've been giving to each response. I know with my NI when things get a little bit when things are starting to get a little rambly, off the rails, less interesting, and or less good as media. And so I'm trying to maintain a good rhythm so that the media is entertaining to watch. Or if I wanted to put it up after fact, like, how after you do a live stream, you could choose to either make it a public video or not. So I'm not sure if I'm going to make this one public or not, but I'm trying to preserve the quality of the media if I do decide to make it a public video. I heard you say it's possible to use the 8 slot in a conductive way, but now you say it's only used for evil. No, I didn't. You misheard me. I said you're very unlikely to use your 8 slot function for evil. You're unlikely to misuse it or abuse it. That you'll be most offended by evil that manifests via your 8 slot function. So I'm offended by brutishness, by destruction through just pushing on ahead and not giving a fuck. I am not C.S. Joseph's father. I am his. I suspect he'd probably view me as a problem that needs to be ignored, or otherwise not concerned about too much because it's unsolvable. Guys, your spirit angel, savior, wise man, witch person is arguing with your demon guru and moisture person, and that's why you right now are living in your your subconscious INTJ while concurrently being a pseudo ISFP while consciously being an ENTJ. That's my diagnosis of you. The old drunken philosopher in a barrel? Who's that? Me? I don't drink alcohol. I don't know, some ESTP. Any tips on how to jive better with my ISFJ husband? I'm ISFJ. Well, I would say the trick with ISFJs is dealing with their knowing things first. Want to know past experience, and how this is going to go is something that may or may not link to how it's gone before, you know. So you gotta shepherd them through the knowing period. They immediately know, and then you gotta shepherd them into their FE and their TI. Let's think about this. He talks about shit, but I don't watch him. Person likes to do repetitive, tedious tasks. Is that indicative of SI? It would seem to be indicative of SI, yeah. I mean, it does these various cleaning rituals she's always done, and she does them every day, and she's very attentive to what she needs to keep track of. She's attentive to when the last eaten, and the cats, and where the cats are, and the it's last eaten, or where it, you know, when she gave it food, and where she keeps track of all that shit. When we leave the house, like Kevin and I decided let's go to Norm's for dinner, and we'll make that decision out here in the garage. Then we'll get ready to go, and then we'll get in the car, and I'll start driving, and I'll go, where are we going? I have no fucking idea where we're going, because by the time between making the decision to go to Norm's and starting to drive the car, I didn't think about the fact that we just made the decision to go to Norm's. But one time, I was always thinking about some other new thing. I wasn't thinking about what we'd already decided. She was thinking about that multiple times during that same period. She was remembering, we decided to go to Norm's. We decided to go to Norm's. We decided to go to Norm's. And so when we get in the car, I say, where are we going? And she says, Norm. Except, no, she doesn't even wait for me to ask. We just get in the car and she goes, we're going to Norm's. That's a perfect example of how SI DOMs treat a simple thing like making a decision to go to a restaurant way differently than NE DOMs do. No, I don't do physical shit because it's unreliable. There are correlates, and sometimes I might say, well, this person looks like an INFJ or an INFP or whatever, but I never use that to actually type them. And as often as not, it's wrong, which is why I don't use it. I do think that I notice my own eyes. I'll often look around, like when I'm ideating out something, trying to figure out where I'm going to go next with a given line of breathing, and I'll move my eyes about. But I'm also making videos, so I'm aware of the fact that the camera's right there, and I should ideally look at the camera the whole time. Would be more probably satisfying for the viewing audience, because then they'll feel like you're making eye contact with them, and if they're FE in the front stack, that for a lot of types will feel like you're engaging them more seriously or more directly. So given the context, it's hard to evaluate my eye movement, right? It depends how relaxed and natural I'm being. It depends on lots of things. So I don't like using physical cues. Is there a way to realize when our dominant function is active? No, it's always active. You are a putter. If you are a NE user, you are a putter of words, which means that before I can make any kind of willful attention, I'm already putting words about things. Whenever I encounter any new situation, I'm already putting words. You have more rapid eye movement than most in real life too, I think. Really? That's interesting to hear. I think that you're a putter all the time. If you think about follow through for the SE DOM, it's the follow through does not necessarily mean they are going to be great at following through on a plan or something. It's the reality that comes from you're always either, if you're an SE dom, doing something new or continuing a doing that's been initiated already, namely following through on a doing. Just as an NE dom, I'm always either ideating something new or continuing on an ideation already begun. And so in that capacity, I'm always ideating. Taylor's always doing something, putting in the physical environment. I'm putting in the metaphysical environment as a default before anything else happens. Now, the thing is, the willful function of the tool function, which is your most willful, comes in concurrently. It doesn't, you don't have extroverted intuition existing independently of anything else. It's, or very rarely, for sensing, you're going to be occurring concurrently, attentionally with your tool function, because you're not just a guy around, you're a guy running around with a hammer. And so your hammer's in your hand ready to hit things, regardless of whether you come up against something that doesn't need to be hit. The first thing you're gonna try to do is hit it with a hammer. And then if that doesn't work, then you'll see. But so you can't activate your dominant function because you can't deactivate it. You can switch over to your fourth function, however, which generally speaking is exclusive of attention in your first. If I'm paying attention to that already made, archiving it, then I'm not new ideas. So in that regard, you can switch off your dominant function by actively attending to your fourth slot function in the same aspect. So it's like I can take a bath and still ideate. In that regard, I'm doing the SE of bathing and I'm doing NE, and I'm not really doing the SI of experiencing the satisfaction of the bath. So if I am doing the SI of something that's going to be occupying all of my attention in a way that is exclusive of the NE, then it's going to have to be a metaphysical archiving kind of a thing, where I go, all right, now what were some of these ideas I had? Let me organize them and make it more sensible and whatever, and not do any new ideation. Then that would be a kind of SI that would be useful for me and would be exclusive of NE. But other than that, you can't really turn off your dominant function. You can only its complement the fourth function. Yeah, it's basically always working, or you're doing the complementary work with your fourth function that necessarily has to be done to go along with it. In other words, I can come up with as many new ideas as I want, but I have to keep track of some of them, or else I won't be able to know that they're new. I could just be repeating myself. Would you say the reason the ENTP is considered better at arguing than the INTP because ENTP is ultimately a little better at managing perception, SE? Well, managing perception is not SE. That's FE. Even if the INTP might be holding the truth. No. I would say because to the extent that it's true, the ENTP is better, and it's not necessarily the case. I had a partner in my debate coaching business, and Kimball, who was an INTP woman, and she was a former state champion in policy debate in California, debated at the same time I did back in the late 80s. And she and I were evenly matched, it's fair to say. Eventually I got the hang of her tricks and I started beating her, but at first, she debated like water. She just doesn't want to. INTPs know how to pin down the things that have no substance. Anyway, but to the extent that the ENTP is better debater than INTP, it's because we're more flexible, and we're INTP. You can surprise INTPs if they've done too much TI going into a topic, especially. You can surprise them because yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Hold on a second, everybody. It's good. Right. Yeah, go on in. Yeah, close the gate. Oh, you be behind you. He's already in here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, my darling. I'm doing a live stream right now. Taylor, I'm interested in hearing what you said there about, react. But I don't want to address it right now. So, can you give us a brief indicative that someone is using a certain function for each type? Well, for each type, like a certain function, ask that question again better. Which functions are most optimally suited to type both yourself and others accurately? Okay, well, I think you can test TI most accurately, but people are resistant to it. They don't want to take a test that shows they're not very good at solving logical validity problems. But you can test that directly. It's one of the only functions you can really test directly. You can test NE directly without it, if you're talking to the person. You can say, tell me how many reasons you can come up with to meow. You can say, finish this story. Once upon a time, there were two tea kettles who were sitting on a stove, and one of them was about to boil, and the other one said, yo, you better not whistle this time. I'm trying to sleep. And then what happens next? And see what they do with it. If they go, well, INTPs are adept at improvising in real time. Real time, remember, real time for the metaphysical world is determined by the speed of it is determined by the speed of your attention. I can read a book faster or slower, depending on who I am. So if I give you a page of information and you can read and process it very quickly, then the duration of that information is as long as it took you to read and process it. Whereas if it takes you a long time to read and process it, then the duration of that information is however long it took you to read and process it. So as a consequence, real time for ideas is different for different people, which is why I'll hear your comments like, Eric, you're going too fast. I can't follow what you're saying. Or Eric, you're going too slow. I have to speed it up to 1.5 because people process information at different speeds. So ENTPs, when it comes to sort of analytical or logical discourse, have an unreasonable advantage over everybody else because we do that at the fastest speed. And the thing about real-time conversations is you don't get to take a time out exactly. It's just like a real-time sporting event in the sense that you can pause, but you can only pause for so long before the point gets decided and you have to move on. Self-analysis is okay with disinterested functions like TI. If you're a TI user, you're probably pretty good at analyzing yourself accurately, and you're probably pretty capable of objective self-criticism. This is some curry that we got last night at the Thai restaurant called Lucky Elephant.
Lift it up.
Lift it up, why?
No, lift up the plate off the bowl.
Oh, lift the plate up off the bowl. Oh, there's rice here too. I didn't see that. Should I just put this on top of this?
I wasn't sure how you wanted
Yeah, I think so. Let me just put this on top of it. Okay, so I want to share with you guys also the new direction for the channel. I've been excited to read about that Korean girl who just eats food on camera and gets millions and millions of subscribers. So I've decided that from now on, all I'm going to do on the channel is eat food. Okay, we're going to have live streams of just me eating like this. I'll go. That's sexy. What? Oh. I think that C.S. Joseph thinks he's an ENTP because he had SI polar. SI polar people seem to have a difficult time getting past this idea that cognitive functions are like abilities of a character. You know, if I'm a magic user in Dungeons and Dragons, then I have certain abilities, but I can't really use a sword. And if I'm a fighter, then I can use I can't really cast any spells. Well, ENTJs and ENFJs seem to think that cognitive functions are like that they can become a super character where they mastered all these functions, and that sometimes you can be in your INTJ shadow and stuff like that. That's not how it works. You are by nature a whatever you are. Like, I'm a putter, I'm an actor, an action person, but and I am that on my natural area of my natural variety of time, namely turn-based, language-based rather than experiential. I can't ever not be that. And he can never not be a TE Dom. He can never not be attending to things in terms of goals and practicalities, efficiencies, purpose. He's invariably teleological. So the reason he seems to this in himself is because he just doesn't understand, because he's SI polar, the way that a person's particular experience can inform and shape them in ways that are not reflected in patterns. So, in other words, he just doesn't get that the reason he's not an ENTP is because he's not looking at it from the right direction. He's saying, am I good at coming up with a lot of ideas? Do I come up with a lot of ideas? That's what he's asking himself that question, and he's answering it. But instead of saying, what am I doing right now? What am I doing right now? Because to him, the particulars of the individual's experience don't matter. It's just what they mean in terms of statuses and character things. And that's because he has NI tool function. When all you have is a hammer, everything you think is the nail. So when all you have is NI as a tool function, you think everything is subject to universal distillations. When all you have is TI as a tool function, you think everything is subject to logical argumentation. So, it's like, I'm wrong all the time about FI stuff, I'm sure. I have people tell me this all the time. Like Kimberly says, Eric, you only have one emotion, you just push it around. Take the hat off inside. All right. My hair's looking pretty sexy tonight, I gotta say. When I take my hat off and my hair looks like this, you can hear this faint thud of all the ladies' panties dropping to the floor. I mean, he might be an ESTJ. He's a TE Dom. Clarissa, listen, I'm not going to put this back on. You just reach down to the ground, you pick those panties up, and you pull them back up onto your body, okay? How do I define FI? And interested calculus, namely attachment. And you don't care about whether it's fair. Well, this is very important to me that it goes this way. But that's not fair to these people. And these people, I don't give a fuck what those people think. I want it my way, and that's how it's going to go down in this instance, because I want what I want more than I want other people to be happy or be fair. I defined SE as blur. I don't know what that means. What does that strategy look like? As blur? I don't think I defined it as blur. I don't know what blur means. I'd have a hard time defining it as something as blur with 2 R's. I mean, I know what blur means with 1 R. You kind of look like the guy who swooped and squatted me. I don't know what swoop and squatted me means. Am I a virgin? Oh, that's an old chart. I'm not. I don't ascribe to that idea anymore. Hey, Eric, been a regular GWFP, appear in chat. Know my MBTI call function type. How would you suggest, if at all, my Enneagram tri-type? The answer to that is you answer yourself some simple questions. How do you deal with fear? Do you think about it? Do you nest or build up your defenses? Or do you avoid thinking about it? If the first one, you're 5, second one, 6, third one, 7. Then the next thing, how do you deal with confrontation or conflict? Do you pow? You want to throw down too? I'm talking about verbal or potentially physical, but verbal, let's say. You like to throw down and you get, oh, you think you're going to be tough? I'm going to be blah. Then you're 8. If you are like, avoid the conflict, let's just make peace, let's just move things over, you're 9. If you're like, let me try to solve it real quick. If I can't, I'm going to walk away, you're 1. And then the 2, 3, 4 is how you deal with shame. Are you okay as a person because you're helpful? Then you're 2. Are you okay as a person because you achieve? Then you're 3. Are you okay as a person because you're an individualist? Then you're 4. That's simple. Clarissa, am I a virgin? Well, I've never had my hymen broken, if that's what you mean, my anal hymen by a man. Does TI get to escape the personal viewpoint, but not FI if both functions are rational? Well, I don't agree with that rational irrational distinction. So I think that TI is objective and universalist. In other words, it deals with symbols that are binary in their statuses. Something is either true or false. It might have no truth value, but generally speaking, we've got binaries on things. They're not spectrum. So it's, if I say Eric is true, Eric is tall, it's true, even though we don't have a bright line between medium and tall. We don't say, well, at 6'3", you become tall. Below that, you're medium. We don't have anything like that, but we can still say definitively the statement Eric is tall is true because it only has binary statuses. It can be true or false, despite the fact that tall is not reflective of a binary metric. So the point being that because TI is binary like that, it is objective, which is to say we're dealing with objects that have concrete defined statuses and things that are not that status. In contrast, FI is subjective and experiential because it is not subject to the same kind of mechanical calculation. You can't say this is true or not true, or this is more important than that, or you can't say anything. It's like learning that you feel sad does nothing for me. It doesn't tell me anything I can use in an argument. I can reduce the fact that you are sad to something. I can use that piece of information in an argument, maybe with a person like, well, look, you have no obligation to do this, but you should do this anyway because she's sad and she's your friend and it would be nice. Something like that. But there's no parsing out the degree of sadness in any meaningful way. You can't check. Nobody else can check the data. Other people can come up and measure me and say I'm 6'4" tall, but they can't measure your sadness. Emotions are not the same as values. You're right. If you were compared to 6-foot guys, I'd be considered short. I'm 6'4". You are assumed that it is truth because the general comparison between average height guys, since you'd be considered tall. Well, you need to understand what truth is. See, truth and falsehood are statuses we afford to claims for the purposes of argumentation. So you're right that there are circumstances in which we'd want to afford the status false to the statement I am true. I am tall. Okay. And you're additionally correct that it's true because, as a general rule, it's considered compared to average people rather than compared to extremely tall people. If I was compared to 7 foot tall guys, it would be considered short amongst that group. But even then, though, you'd say, well, by comparison, this guy is shorter than the other guys. That's a true statement that is true because of its link to the relative. In other words, in this individual situation, we have a finite set of data. We can say, I am the shortest of this group, and that be a definitively true statement because the data set is defined in such a way that it's definitionally so that I'm the shortest of the group. So we need to make a distinction between things that are definitionally so and things that are supported in other ways. There's different ways to support claims. But the point is, FI doesn't concern itself with the justifications of claims. The justification is always the same because of my feelings. And the point to take away from it, though, is it is in no way, shape, or form should one conclude that you necessarily have a better life because you're more objective or logical. Knowing what you want very clearly is a powerful ability that I don't have. Okay, well, Mega Bro, I'm going to disagree with you about your loops notion there because TI both affirms and negates depending on what it's doing. And it uses the same exact techniques regardless whether it's affirming or negating. So I could affirm something, specifically say, here's why this thing is true and we should ascribe to it. And I'd be using TI to draw attention to consistencies between a given notion and other supporting notions. That would be presumably TI positive. But it's the exact same thing as TI negative. It's just using it for a different purpose. Do functions other than FI supply motivation? If yes, can you give examples? Well, look, FE is based on the idea that everybody wants the same thing. They want to be liked, respected, treated nicely and kindly and politely, and included and allowed to be who they are and not reduced and stuff like that. So they're sort of universal emotions, you might say, but they're not really emotions. They're universal human needs and desires. Those things there obviously provide motivation. Because I'm an FE user, my emotions are replaced by those universals mostly because I'm third slot FE. I'm like, how do I feel? Well, I want to be liked and respected and blah, 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 blah. That's not a feeling, Eric. Well, close enough. Well, look, question marks. All statement, truth is not an absolute at all. Truth is absolutely relative. Namely, a statement is true because the relatives are defined, allowing it to become definitionally necessarily so. What's universal and absolute is not truth, it's validity. So something is valid or invalid regardless of its truth value. I'd say all pigs love opera, and my daughter Delilah is a pig, therefore she loves opera. It's logically valid, even though it's comprised of nothing but false statements. So when we critique something with TI, we critique it on validity, really. We acknowledge that truth values are established for the purposes of argumentation, for the purpose of a specific argument, right? Or a specific engagement with another person. So right now, I'm using TI to address what you're saying here. I'm pointing out that it is true that all statements are relative to a given discursive event in which parties agree on certain things in order to do argumentational work. But that doesn't mean that things don't have more or less rhetorical slope. So, for example, it's a lot easier to prove to you that I like grapefruit juice. I mean, well, actually, that's a bad example. It's a lot easier to prove to you that that it's a better understanding of the data in front of us right now, that the lights are on in here, than that it is daytime and the sun is shining, for multiple reasons. It's a better explanation to assume the lights are on. I can make that assertion, right? And it's an easy thing to argue because the facts are on your side, more or less. I could also argue that the opposite. I could say that because it's light in here, it must be daytime because the sun is what produces light, and it must be a hole in the ceiling because it's so bright in here. I could make that argument as well. That's a much steeper rhetorical slope. It's harder to establish or harder to prove. Neither the mistake that people make is thinking that therefore there must be an inherent truiness to things, but that's not the case. What's the case is that certain agreements become so default in order to have conversations about things that are not in agreement that we
Scoot over so I can see your gorgeous face. Thank you.
That we just basically we assume that the truth is contained within the idea or the statement rather than something that we ascribe to the statement or idea in order to do argumentational work, which is the actual truth of the matter. You know, I mean, that's what's happening when we're doing that. Okay, so let me scroll down here. Does that mean I don't value FI as a conscious function, or that it is, or is that not entirely true? Dan Klein, what type are you? Are you an INFJ? I love grapefruit. I can't believe it's so kind as to give me this grapefruit juice. And it's my favorite kind of grapefruit juice as well. It's the Trader Joe's grapefruit juice. Well, it would be your implicit value then. FI would be your implicit value, which means if you don't engage or resonate with something on an emotional level, whether you like it or not, whether it's precious to you in some way, like, then you just avoid it. You just won't want to deal with it at all. So, for example, my INFP friend Liz, she really was into Naruto, and she'd watch it and watch it and watch it and talk about it and rewatch it and feel it every time, the same feelings, you know. I don't get that SIFI like knob twisting that happens there.
You cry at the end of Naruto.
I know, but the point is I don't sit there and rewatch it and re-experience the episodes over and over again like an INFP might.
But you cry like an ENTP might?
Well, I cry because it's very moving. I cry because Naruto is very he's a very noble ESFP. You know, he's a person that ESFPs should look to see how to be ESFP well. How does bipolar FI manifest? Do I struggle to know who I am? Yeah, I do, I guess. I struggle to know what I want. I struggle to find enthusiasm sometimes for things. I mean, the thing is, the ENTP is somebody who thrives on enthusiasm. I need to feel enthusiasm for things, or else I go to more of a dark place. Like, if I'm stuck in the car for a long drive, I'm in the car by myself for a long drive, like 4 or 5 hours, I have nobody to talk to. By the end of that 4 or 5 hours, I'll be in a pretty dark place because I've been doing something that allows me to NE, right? But it limits me to just sort of a couple applications of it. When I try to apply extroverted intuition when I'm driving, I always do something stupid. Like there is Taylor, there's shame and crying. No, there's not. So it's like if there's traffic, my Enneagram will start going like, okay, well, what can I do to get around this? And I'll invariably take an exit to surface streets thinking I'm going to figure out a shortcut and end up costing myself even more time. So, it's like there's times when extroverted intuition just needs to stay inside your head or maybe make a video on the phone or something. It's not very gratifying. And then there's nothing to TI about. It's just, you're just driving. There's nothing to, if you're just stuck in your head for too long, there's no FE satisfaction. You're just ideating with logic and nobody's paying any attention and nobody cares. And I just start feeling awful after a certain amount of time.
I'm scratching your butt.
Of driving in the car by myself. I have a pet theory that our dominant tool function are a real blind function. Can't elaborate, but it's a hunch. Well, yeah, that notion, you could say this. You're most enslaved by your dominant and tool function because my SE comes out and attends as it needs to and goes away without me really being very willful about it, thinking about it much or anything like that. I don't turn to it when it's not appropriate. I only turn to it when it is appropriate. And it doesn't control me in any sense. But extroverted intuition is the thing that I am reflexively being, whether it's appropriate or not, whether I ought to or not, whether I want to or not. And TI is my tool function. There's the reason why the tool function defines your polar is because if it is the default habitual way to approach every problem, then the alternate manner of that function, the alternate one of that kind of function, will never get pulled out of the toolbox. No, you're not ignoring the dominant function. It's conscious. The dominant function is like it's like breathing. You can become consciously controlling of it in a way, but it doesn't matter. You can't really turn it off, right? So I can take control of my breathing, or I can ignore it and I'll just keep breathing. TI is more like looking at stuff. It's pretty instinctual and pretty automatic, but it's nevertheless something that you kind of consciously do or choose to do or choose not to do. It's something you're using willfully. Not rather than, but similar to your eyes, it's like as long as they're open, you're going to be seeing something with it, but you could close them easily enough. So that's the thing about your dominant and your second. But the thing is to say that you're the slave to those functions. It's basically just to say my identity, my distinct humanness of Eric, who I am, is an expression of a person who's an ideator first and
animal second.
Ideator first and a logician second. So, and the corresponding value matrix associations are.
Where does horn dog lie?
What?
Where does horn dog lie?
I think that's polar FI and third slot FE combined with, I guess, a certain amount of NI. It's like I don't understand feelings very well, so I don't sense from Kimberly like, oh well, she loves me, therefore I can rely on that for anything. Her emotional attachment to me is not something that I can believe in really or get. even though I might be emotionally attached to her, think I'm emotionally attached to her, I don't know what that means well enough to rely on that as a status to indicate anything. So it's like, what does indicate to me that she likes me is her having sex with me. That indicates that she likes me. So as my hidden agenda is to be loved, if I want to be loved and I understand being loved as symbols of love rather than the actual emotion itself, then the most basic symbol of love a woman can show a man is that she wants to have sex with him.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
I just answered the question. There are times I could think SI, my first TI, because it's so much better at memorizing the conclusions I draw from TI. I don't really believe that, by the way. Just within theory, it makes sense. Well, I mean, look, I've been typed as an ESFJ before. There's, I guess, with Voltology typed me as that. ESFJ, which is FE dominant. My FE hidden agenda, I think, shines through pretty clearly. I've said early on in this thing, in the YouTube channel, that my reason for doing it is because I wanted attention. Not that it's bad FE, but not that it's good FE too.
You don't get enough around here, huh?
What, FE?
Attention.
I mean, so the point is, I think I have a very meta approach to FE. I think that people are going to perceive me saying something like that as unpretentious, honest, and make me more likable rather than less. I mean, maybe the stock answer is I'm here to help people, but I'm not really here to help people. I mean, I don't mind helping people. I like helping people. I'm reasonably helpful.
Yes, you are.
But that's not why I'm here. It's like I'm here because look at this. Like there's 47 people watching me and everybody chatting at me and stuff. How exciting is that? Pretty fun. Bye, Mega Bro. I've had enough. That's it, Eric. I'm done with you. I'm going to bed. I'm Mega Bro and I'm going to bed, goddammit.
He's had enough of your face.
Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up here pretty quick. I got about 12 minutes left. I'm going to go to about 2 hours here. So if there are any pressing questions that you were thinking about asking but haven't asked yet or something, throw them out there, and I will address them in the next 11 minutes. Yeah, that's a seriously low FE goodbye. or high FE goodbye for somebody who hates me. Probably. Well, my channel compares to C.S. Joseph's. Well, look, his third soft function is SE. And that comes through in all of the shit he talks about doing all the time. Like, he's putting in this shit in his studio and telling us about how he's doing this and doing that and getting this and doing that.
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys. No, I haven't made a character. It's a diss track yet. How did my 8th slot SE manifest? I've already answered that, but basically balanced. I accomplish most things I accomplish in life. I accomplish by SE, but I don't really consciously value it. And I don't have to think about it much. I don't have to activate it willfully. What's the difference between fourth TI and polar TI? Fourth TI and ESFJ is receptive to TI instruction, which is nice. Fourth TI and ENFJ is terrified of TI and runs away. Whenever you start breaking down their NI bullshit, they run away in terror. A brief indication someone's using a function. I mean, you can't make that determination. You have to tell me some sort of context. It depends contextually. For example, like, look, let's say there's a spoon at a restaurant. If I'm using any, I'm going to be going, I could be doing any number of things, but it could be like, well, what can I use this spoon for at home? I could dig a hole with it. I could poke it in my eye. I could throw it at the cat. Or it could be like making a story up about a spoon. One time this spoon was at a table earlier today, and the lady used it to mix up some ketchup, and the spoon was very upset, saying, I'm not a ketchup stirring spoon. Whatever. There's NE with a spoon. TI with a spoon goes, this is not the kind of spoon that's supposed to be with this kind of fork. Why, like, I see some inconsistency here on the table setting. FE goes, I see they brought out the good silverware for us, thank goodness, because we are very important. SI goes, I remember this spoon from last time I was here. I think I got the same spoon. I remember this scratch on it. NI goes, spoons are for scooping things that are liquid. TE goes, I would eat a lot faster if I had a bigger spoon. I'm going to see if I can get a bigger spoon. FI goes, I love this spoon. I'm going to take it home with me. And then SE goes, just eats. SE just eats with the spoon. Know what I'm saying? Dogs? Know what I'm saying? Guys, listen. Guys. You've got to set some goals. You got to set some goals, and you got to do some things to meet your goals. Very important. Now look what I'm doing here. I'm installing this cat on the wall. This cat will be an important sound reflector on the back wall there. Where do lost things go? Well, I usually find them in either Kimberly's anus or sometimes my own anus. NI spoons are for liquid. NI spoons are for scooping. Thanks, NI. Thanks for that very, very helpful, useful truth that you've provided me. I really greatly appreciate that. Juan Pablo. Hello, Juan Pablo. Hello, senor. Would you like a bong rip? Oh, si, senor. So, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but I got this guy named Juan Pablo who's always coming over here, smoking all my weed. But I just keep inviting him and saying, come on over and smoke weed. Are you satisfying with your life? Am I satisfied with my life?
Oh, no. Be honest.
Yeah.
Not really right now.
Yeah, I'm totally satisfied with my life.
No, you're not.
Kim,
You fought all day.
I know, but I'm not as locked in the moment as you are. So it's like, to me, the universe doesn't begin at dawn and end at dusk. It's like I am very satisfied with my life. I've got a great life. I'm a little pissed at Kimberly right now. That's true. But, she's got a way. She's got a way with her to piss me off sometimes. I just gotta, obviously Kimberly is slab indicated. I have been giving Kimberly and she's been giving me for a reason. So, NESI, mistake make-believe for reality. That's true, except it's not mistake, okay? Correctly replace reality with make-believe is a better way to put it. Yes, I absolutely, I will change reality into what I want it to be as long as everybody just lets me talk long enough. Okay, so let's see here. What other instruments do I play? I play the drums, I play piano, I can play the bass a little bit, but
He plays the meat flute.
I play the meat flute. Yeah. You want to come over here and let me play your meat flute? Make some beautiful music. It's gonna sound like this. Yeah, she's my Andy Richter. I'm in my shadow. I'm in my shadow. What? My channel makes, well, until recently, it made about $50 a month. But since Type Police,
we don't need to tell them how much we make now. But yes, we make significantly more since Type Police.
Yeah, we make like $200 a month. So that's pretty good. But I still haven't begun to. I mean, I've tried to make a dent, but I have more invested into the channel than I've gotten out of it. Takes one to know one. Play the jug pretty well. Yeah, I play the milk spouts. I play the woman milk spouts well. Here you go, woman.
Yes, you sure.
Here you go, Juan Pablo.
He wants to play those.
Thank you, senor.
Nightly.
I'm proud of you. Continue with the series. Thank you for being proud of me. You hear that? Lots of question marks is proud of me. You know who lots of question marks might be? Is lots of question marks Steve from my city?
Steve?
I mean, well, his YouTube channel was lots of question marks, if I remember correctly. A Steve from my city who.
One that said you when all that stuff went down?
Yeah, one who may have been like the cop. I forget his name now. You're getting your wish to be loved from a question mark? Yeah. Oh, just a random viewer. Okay.
Just a random viewer. Okay,
random viewer. Well, now you know the truth. The dark, serious truth. SITE. Example of the two in action. Well, it's I can see an ISTJ like Cameron. He'll show up, he comes over here. He's got this little round cooler, right? And he's got inside of it his bong, his weed containers, his lighters that he's got. He's pimps out his lighters. So he'll take a lighter like this, except he gets this kind that has a flashlight on the bottom of it, and you push a little button on it, and then he'll glue a quarter to it so that it's the perfect bowl capping thing here. So the thing about that is when I'm like, hey Cameron, you want to come over? What is he doing? He at that moment is thinking, I'm leaving for Eric's house. How do I leave for Eric's house? And he gathers all of his shit together as he always does, in the same fashion, in the same thing. And it's very efficient for him. Why does he gather all that shit together and come over here? Because he doesn't want to use my dirty bong. He wants to use his own personal clean bong that is just perfectly suited for him and his lungs and gives him minimal amount of air and mixed in with the weed smoke. He's got all his weed grounded.
Labeled, sealed.
Right. He grinds. He's got it all grinded and ground.
Grinded is not a word.
All right, he's got it all ground because he doesn't like to smoke like the bud. He likes to have it all ground up, I guess. I don't know. Those sort of habits of things that you yourself like because who you are and what you want animal wise and yada yada yada. And then you know how to accomplish it on a consistent basis. You can apply the same heuristic every time. That's straight up SITE shit.
Well, that's it for an exciting live view with host Eric. Next live viewing will be with Red.
We will. I don't have another live stream planned at the moment, Kim. But yes, I think my cats have cognitive functions, or at least I think they have types. That's it for tonight. Thanks for all being here and appreciate it. And talk to you later.